The Noah, a colossal ship the size of an entire island. It's been sleeping on the seafloor since the Void Century at the very least, waiting to be used, but what is it actually supposed to be used for? I think there's a real possibility that the Noah was in fact Joy Boy's ship, and even crazier than that, I think that the Noah might have been the ancient kingdom itself. I know, that sounds pretty out there, but consider the fact, please, that it might not be, and instead, it might just be the sauciest idea since Crocomom. Now, in case you haven't caught that Fishman Island reanimation thing and are a little bit fuzzy on the details, let me quickly refresh you on everything we know for sure about this very mysterious ship, since I recently actually reread this arc in Japanese, and what I've actually found there is absolutely wild, especially with everything that we've been learning on Elbaf. And yes, I know Fishman Island isn't exactly everyone's favorite, but it's all gonna be super important for building my case here, so stick with me for a moment. The Noah, also called the Ship of Promise by those in the know, wink wink, is a big old boat that was created during the Void Century by the residents of Fishman Island. And when I say big, I mean like island-sized big, but there's a slight problem with it, which is that since it was created during the Void Century, no one knows what the heck it's actually meant for. So up until this point, it had just been chilling in the Fishman district, collecting super wet dust for centuries, and, people building around it basically. Queen Otohime and King Neptune had a theory though, a Noah theory. They figured that its purpose was probably to bring the residents of Fishman Island back up to the surface, a theory that has become pretty popular amongst fans too, and it would kind of make sense for them to think that, because rejoining the surface world and living under the same sun again with humanity was like Otohime's entire thing. But what we do know for sure here is that the Noah was part of a big promise that Joy Boy made to raise the ship to the surface using Poseidon's powers. You see, Noah's got a bunch of giant chains all attached to it because it's meant to be pulled by the Sea Kings up to the surface, but for some reason, Joy Boy had to break that promise. He instead decided to leave behind a big old apology in the form of one of the poneglyphs, leaving the Noah to be raised by someone else in the far future instead. It's totally gonna be Luffy. But instead of raising it, Luffy just, punched it a whole bunch of times because, to be fair, that's kind of how he solves all problems. And at that time, thanks to one of One Piece's top tier creeps, Vanderdecken, the ship was actually about to smash into and destroy all of Fishman Island. Which low-key kind of shows that his devil fruit was kind of pretty cool. But thanks to Shirahoshi's Poseidon powers and the intervention of the Sea Kings, most of the ship was saved. But the Sea Kings were not happy about Luffy busting it completely up. They were low-key pretty stressed that it wouldn't be ready and would not be fixable in time for the Promised Day, at least not without the help of a certain group of people, a clan, as they put it, but they were absolutely stoked that Shirahoshi had finally awakened her powers because they'd been waiting on the next Poseidon for a long time. And somehow it's the Sea Kings who for the longest time I just thought were these big, hungry, random sea monsters who apparently just know more about the prophecy and Joy Boy than anyone else in the entire One Piece world. So this raises quite a lot of questions to me. What was the exact promise, right? What's the Noah for? What's the Sea King's entire deal? How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop, right? And I think now is the time to look for answers. Because honestly, I'm 98% certain that Fishman Island is right about to get that big Skypiea treatment real soon in the story. I mean, there's a reason, let's not kid around here, that Toei chose this arc out of all the other beloved arcs, this to fix up and re-release during the anime break, right? Because people might not have liked Hody Jones very much, but let's be real also, it gave us our first ancient weapon ever with Shirahoshi, and in general, conceptually, I'm a much bigger Fishman Island fan than I was when it first came out now. Also, the arc gave us the first ever name drop of the Joy Boy, and it gave us the Noah. And where did we see the Noah again recently? Well, if it isn't my lover, my inspiration, dare I say, my muse. The mural. It just wouldn't be an Ohara video, of course, without my dear. And I've got so many questions. So why is it in what I think is the first world section of the mural? Why is it hanging out with Emu and Zunisha, presumably? Why has it got a bunch of animals lined up by it, just like Noah's Ark from the Bible? That's right. Bible pieces back. No? No? Okay. But before I get all Old Testament here on you, let's talk instead about how the Noah was actually built. And, spoiler alert, this ship of course would have never been possible without the help of the Galela. In chapter 632, Vanderdecken, this guy again with the pretty crazy devil fruit, states that the Noah was built by the citizens of Fishman Island. And well, that was pretty easy, problem solved, let's all head home, nothing to see here. I guess it's always been down at the bottom of the sea and Joy Boy never sailed around on it. What a foolish thing to make a video about, Manu, you could have just read the manga. Is what I'd like to say, but I don't trust a single thing that this slimy creep here says, even if he did have a famous great-grandpa. Because I'm personally not actually super convinced that it actually was the citizens of Fishman Island who did build the Noah, at least not Fishman Island as we know it today. Because how old is the current Fishman Island that we go to in the story? Let's go consider a couple of little facts here that we know. First, the sea level used to be 200 meters lower. There was just a whole less ocean for the fishmen to live in. Now, this doesn't really affect Fishman Island per se in particular, since it's under the red line at the bottom of the ocean. That space, of course, would most likely still have existed even before the Void Century. You know, the deep, deep sea, kind of like the white, I don't get it. But if you combine this with Otohime's dream for fishmen to live on the surface, I do think that it paints a much different picture. Because Otohime's dream specifically implies to me that the fishmen are returning to the surface. At least that's how I've always interpreted it, and especially in Japanese, that seems to be very clear. And especially in the Japanese original, it really feels like at one time, we don't know when, the fishmen were free to live in the sunlight as equal to humans, likely during the time of the Great Kingdom, since Fishman Island is clearly a country that's been allied heavily with Joy Boy. And I don't know what it is, but something tells me that it wasn't until a certain world government took over and discrimination against fishermen became more widespread that Fishman Island was established beneath the red line, built there because, thanks to the sunlight tree Eve's roots, it was the only place on the seafloor that could actually receive ample sunlight. Now, just to be clear, of course, it could also date back even further all the way to the age of slavery and the First World, but at that point, I don't even think that the red line was probably there either, since my running theory right now is that the red line is made out of the remains of the Hellflame Serpent, and thus of course wouldn't have existed until the end of the First World to begin with. And putting all of this together, it's actually pretty unclear when Fishman Island, as we know it, was actually founded, but I kind of feel like Fishman Island at some point, possibly the point when the Noah was also built, might have been a more amphibious society. Just think about it for a moment, right? There was a lot more land at this point anyway, since the world hadn't been flooded yet. The fishmen were probably living in the sun amongst the human beings. We've heard that from a bunch of them. And I don't know if this is my lifelong Zelda obsession talking, but I kind of like to think that the Fishman society might have been a lot like the Zora at some point, living both in water and on land, because we do know that the fishmen can do that anyways. After all, fishmen are amphibious in the story. They breathe air, they walk around, they love the sunshine, and they don't explode like a vampire when you put them in the sun. Actually, I guess vampires don't, you get the point, right? And if they weren't all the way underwater when the Noah was first built, it would have made it a lot easier for another certain group of shipwrights to help throw that specific boat together. I'm speaking, of course, of the Galela, my new best friends ever since Rocks blasted them right into the One Piece lore a couple of chapters ago. These giants and ancient giants and other people from Elbaf are the most legendary shipwrights in history. They're the ones who built the ultimate battleship, the ancient weapon Pluton. They also left some blueprints for a counter Pluton with a certain fisherman, and it looks like that's not the only ancient weapon they were familiar with, because they were hanging around with Poseidon in the day too. How do I know that? Well, when the Sea Kings showed up in Fishman Island to rescue the Noah and the island in general, they started on a huge lore drop, right? I just wasn't ready for it back then, but rereading it now in the original Japanese, yeah, they basically just say out straight that they needed the Galela, a certain tribe of people, to fix the damage that Luffy did to the ship, right? They discuss how badly Luffy wrecked the boat, hoping it could be repaired, but only by these people, only them, right, before the promised time. And they say that they needed their help, so in classic Oda fashion, there is left unspecified, though the kanji used in Japanese is the exact same one as would be used for the Hammer tribe in Elbaf as well when they're first introduced. And of course, even if they had said Galela straight out at the time, we wouldn't have known what that even meant, but again, rereading it in Japanese, the association is clear as day. But if you want even more evidence that it's the Galela, the Sea Kings worry that they won't be able to help because it's now a different age. An extremely qualified ship-fixing group from a different age that they don't know if they can come back and do anything. Yeah, let's be real, that's the Galela for sure, right? And since they're the best shipwrights around, I imagine they built the Noah in the first place. Again, just like with Pluton, it would definitely make more than sense for a group of giants to build such a gigantic ship, and it makes sense because both Elbaf and Fishman Island are also massive Joy Boy allies. And then of course, the Galela hanging out with the fishmen also answers another very pressing question that's been on my mind recently, which is why Tom, out of all people, had the Pluton blueprints. If Pluton was built by giants from Elbaf, you'd think that the blueprints would be passed down by the giants, maybe even as part of the national treasure on Elbaf, right? Like put it next to Ragnir and the Devil Fruit. But if the Galela were working alongside Fishman shipwrights in an old version of Fishman Island, probably somewhere else, not the seafloor, it would have created the perfect opportunity to hide those plans somewhere the world government wouldn't ever expect, actually right under their noses. The Galela probably wouldn't want their fail-safe plan to be hidden with them, which was a pretty good call since at some point they were captured and frozen solid and someone brought them to Punk Hazard, right? So they probably gave it to a very talented shipwright on Fishman Island who eventually passed it down to Tom, along with the name of Galela, which explains where Iceberg then got the name Galela from in the first place. Heck, I mean, Tom's brother Den still codes ships in the Sea Forest, hanging out right by that big poneglyph that explains Joy Boy's broken promise and where, you know, the other road poneglyph used to be. And speaking of Joy Boy's broken promise, what actually was it exactly? What was this huge ship meant to do? Because personally, I don't think that Otohime's guess is correct at all. I don't think that the ship is meant to bring the citizens of Fishman Island back up to the surface. I think that Joy Boy had much bigger plans with it, like say, sailing on it himself and maybe, just maybe, saving the world, which he didn't manage to do yet, right? We already know that even as little kids, it's no problem for the fishmen to swim up all the way to Sabaody Archipelago. Their whole thing is that they can survive underwater. So if they really wanted to move up to the surface, why would they even need a big freaking boat to do that? I instead believe that the Noah is intended to sail on the ocean's surface. Well, I guess not sail, since it doesn't seem to be wind-powered. I think it's intended to be pulled by the Sea Kings on the ocean surface. They pretty much tell us exactly that during Fishman Island 2. And just to be clear, I think that it was probably built above the water too, and then sunk on purpose in order to preserve it for the future. Which of course makes Fishman Island a fantastic hiding spot. It's hidden in plain sight, an object so old and so, you know, like looking like a ruin that no one knows what it's actually for, right literally underneath Imu's feet at the bottom of the red line under Marijoa. And at some point it just became part of the scenery, even to the very watchful eyes of the world government, who weren't coming down to Fishman Island that often anyways. And if that's the case, then why? What do with the ship? And I can see a couple of possibilities here. First up, the craziest one, and then the slightly more realistic one. Ready? Number 1. Was the Noah actually the Great Kingdom itself? In other words, could the Noah have been Joy Boy's ship? I mean, we do know that Joy Boy was from the Great Kingdom and that he's the first person in the world to be called a pirate, so was he sailing around even before the world ever flooded? I'm pretty sure many of the islands on the Grand Line that we've seen used to be either allies or even part of that Great Kingdom. You can kind of tell by whether they've got the Joy Boy symbol hidden in their flag or if they're hiding poneglyphs, etc., etc. And if the Great Kingdom was this huge civilization that spanned the globe, maybe Joy Boy ruled over this kingdom as some kind of literal king of the pirates in like an actual king of a nation type sense, sailing through this great kingdom from place to place, bringing laughter and cheers as he did that. Now, we don't know for sure if Joy Boy was a king actually or not. It could have been Davy D. Jones, the former king of the world, but I do think that the idea of him being the first king of the pirates in a very literal way would be such a neat idea. Back then, the world was just so different than what we know now, like the borders of Wano were opened and people were free to come and go. The giants of Elbaf traded with other people around the world, just as Harold and Ida would dream later on as well. The fishmen were free to live in the light of the sun amongst the people of the surface. The Great Kingdom probably rocked for most people. And the Noah is a ship that's basically at least half the size of the entirety of Fishman Island already. It can carry a lot of people. And if at one point it traveled above the surface of the waters, it might have been like a nation in and of itself, right? Think Thriller Bark, but times 1,000. It straight up might have been Joy Boy's Great Kingdom for everyone who wanted to explore, travel, and be free. It could have even developed advanced technologies through the sharing of ideas across culture and collaboration of the great minds from many different parts of the One Piece world. It could even explain beautifully how Joy Boy made so many allies of nations that were so far separated and sprinkled out across the globe, right? That Noah might have docked at countries like Alabasta, Shandora, which yes was still at the regular Blue Ocean, right? Wano, Fishman Island, Elbaf, helping to exchange goods and culture and maybe technology. It may have been a truly multicultural civilization, bringing the people of the world together under one banner, the symbol of Joy Boy's sun. Perhaps those different countries then started to consider themselves part of that great kingdom, or maybe the reason that symbol exists on all their flags today is even a little bit different. Maybe it's much like how One Piece countries today kind of fly the banner of different pirates. Like, you know how the Yonko of today kind of claim different territories in the Grand Line? Maybe Joy Boy planted his flag in all of these places across the world to claim them as his territory, places that were thus under his protection from outside threats, for example, Emu and the other 20 kings. I think a setup like this, imagining the Great Kingdom as this nation of pirates with Joy Boy as its king on top, so to speak, embodies the themes of One Piece overall as a story pretty fantastically too. I mean, Luffy seeks to become king of the pirates, spreading freedom around the world wherever he goes and inheriting the will of Nika, Joy Boy, Roger, Ace, right? And what better way to represent all of those themes than creating a giant nation that literally is just as free as can be because it's always on the move. This, I think, would also actually set up Blackbeard as a really interesting contrast to these ideas, because part of his plans lately with trying to get the government to recognize Hachinoso and himself as a member nation of the world government feels like trying to become a literal pirate king in a very different sense by going through the proper official channels. Now, of course, it's probably also just his way of getting into Marijua and taking down Emu, following in his dear daddy's dark footsteps. What a crushingly cool alliteration right there. But I also think that the contrasts are honestly there. Blackbeard has founded this stationary home base where he rules as a sort of king over his lawless pirate island, while Luffy embodies freedom by just traveling around the world, expanding his territory fairly passively. He's just like, we'll protect you, but you do you. I don't want to have to deal with anything. No taxes, no nothing. If you need me, I'll be there. And putting his allies under his umbrella of help, you know, kind of helping them become just as free as him and the crew are too. But at some point after Joy Boy was defeated, the Noah might have been sunk to hide it from Emu and preserve it to use in the future. In fact, I just thought about this when talking about it, but remember how Vegapunk said that he didn't really know which side was in the right, and how we've talked a lot on the channel before in the past that if Joy Boy had all these ancient weapons, there's a pretty good chance that Joy Boy was the person who actually flooded the world. I mean, you could say, like I said in some other videos in the past, that maybe it was an accident and he used the ancient weapons without knowing what they would do, or like had to do it to defeat Emu and then the world flooded. A little bit of a darker and more aggressive thought could be that, you know, Joy Boy flooded the world on purpose to literally expand his kingdom. I mean, if the Noah is the Great Kingdom and his pirate ship, if there is more water around, you kind of like crush all the other kingdoms who are fighting against you and expand your territory like by a ton. Did we beep that? Okay, cool. Yeah. So just an idea as well. Now, the big hole that I see here, besides Ennis Lobby, is that the Great Kingdom was also supposed to be super technologically advanced, and the Noah, here at least, whenever we see it, definitely seems like a pretty normal, as if, you know, still a marvel of engineering, but you know, it's not exactly great. It's just a normal wooden ARK. No crazy lasers inside anywhere, but to be fair also, for a technologically so advanced kingdom as the Great Kingdom seems to be, not much of its technology seems to remain anywhere. I mean, Vegapunk apparently found some bits and scraps that he used to inspire his own, as he says himself, inferior inventions. Emeth the Iron Giant showed up from who knows where, guided by who knows who to attack Marijua 200 years ago, and by all metrics, he doesn't look that insanely advanced on the outside either. So wherever he and any other remaining Void Century tech are actually hidden, it must be really well hidden. But we really don't see much of the technological marvels of the Void Century anywhere in the world, even on the seafloor presumably, where we've seen ruins of some of the older civilizations that got flooded. So I personally don't think that the lack of cool lasers or rocket propulsion on the Noah disqualifies it immediately from its association to the Great Kingdom either. But of course, as cool as this idea could be, it's just one possibility. One of the other prevailing theories about the Noah I've seen floating around is that the Noah isn't meant to save the fishmen. Instead, it's meant to save everyone else. And for this, it really just comes down to a little bit of my favorite thing, mythology. The first big hint here, I think, is that the ship is quite literally called the Noah. That's right. Bible Peace is back after all. If you weren't Sunday school maxing like me, let me tell you a little story. There was once a man named Noah, and God commanded him to build a big ark, like the biggest ARK of all time. Why? Because God deemed humanity a failure, so he decided to hit the big do-over button in heaven. You know, a totally normal thing to do. He was gonna flood the entire world and create a global reset. So Noah was commanded to take 2 of every animal along with him in the ark while the world flooded. Just not the dinosaurs, sadly, they didn't qualify. And after the flood subsided, he and his family then went on to restart all of humanity together. Little fun fact here, I'm gonna go on a side rant. I have a, let's say, weakness for alt history stuff. So even though I'm not saying any of this is true, I have like a fascination with people who dug into like, there might have been more advanced civilization in our world. And as you probably know, because I've talked about it on this channel before, chances are pretty good that there was a real flood, a real giant flood, roughly 10,000 or 12,000 years ago in our real world that might have inspired the Noah story, because the story of Noah and the big flood and someone building a ship and kind of carrying on, you know, civilization and, you know, people coming and bringing civilization back after that flood subsided, that story exists in pretty much every single culture on the entire planet. So kind of cool fun fact there. I kind of have been intrigued that One Piece mirrors like these speculations and like this alt history stuff that potentially in our planet there might have been a more advanced civilization that got wiped out in a giant flood, and then, you know, we're just kind of like rebuilding and only some fragments got left from what they actually knew. Just so you know why I'm so excited about this, because I love it when it becomes very apparent that Oda is into a lot of the conspiracy stuff. I think that's super fun. Aliens, Hollow Moon, like, you know, the ancient civilization that's been lost in the flood. Oda is using all the stuff and putting it into One Piece. Are they actually gonna reveal the Marijoa files? We'll see. Now, this connection with the Noah and mythology is kind of enforced by the mural too. Right by the big elephant that I'm just gonna assume is Zunisha, right, is a ship that looks pretty much exactly like the Noah with a bunch of animals walking alongside it. But since I've been interpreting this half of the mural as the first world, is the Noah actually way older than we all think? Is there just another similar ship even older than the Noah instead? Or is this part actually showing already part of the second world and the Noah was used to save animals or people from the first flooding? And then, after it was used, it would have been sunk down to Fishman Island, though that doesn't really line up with the timeline of Joy Boy's promise, so I really don't know what it's doing on the mural, honestly, unless the mural is showing what was supposed to happen, but not everything went according to plan. I don't know, man, but what I do know is that the biblical Noah story and the One Piece flood line up pretty much perfectly. I mean, already there are a crazy amount of One Piece parallels, right? The global flood, Emu, who considers himself a god wanting a great cleansing of the people, right? But Noah's task specifically might be telling us what the ship named after him is actually for. It's to save people from the big next flood. Now, you know who doesn't need to be saved from a global flooding? The sky races. But you know who else? A species that can literally breathe and live underwater. Like, if anyone's gonna be A-okay during Emu's wettest dream come true, it'll be the fishmen and the merfolk. But all the people left up on top on all these islands, well, they're gonna need some real help. As all the remaining islands become submerged and there's literally nowhere else to go that's not underwater, other than the Red Line and maybe some big bridges, the Noah could save the day, carrying everyone through until Emu's defeated and the ocean gets drained somehow, I guess. Which does raise the question also of where all this water is even coming from, because I'm not sure that the One Piece world has polar ice caps, yet alone ones big enough to sink the whole world once they melt. Though thinking about it, didn't Buggy and Shanks have that discussion in like chapter 5 when we get that first Buggy Shanks flashback in Orange Town? Aren't they debating about the North and the South Pole? So I guess these exist, and I think I even remember that Oda answered in an SBS that the North Pole is colder, like Shanks was right or something. So I guess that means there are poles and ice, like a North and a South Pole in the One Piece world. Which means, are the ancient weapons just used to nuke the poles and cause global flooding that way? Anyways, the Noah traveling around the world to save people would also be a super cool way to revisit all the places we've come to love throughout the story and bring some of our favorite characters back for the final war. We could kind of speedrun a world tour of the Grand Line, getting a chance to see everyone once again before the end, though not as wholesome and sweet as you checking out my Patreon, where you can help me, make all of these videos possible. I mean, putting out these videos every week would just not be possible without the help of my amazing art team and my editors, and for just a few bucks a month, you can get access to a ton of downloadable artwork and a bunch of other bonus content too, so huge shout out to all of the Patreons we already have there. You guys really allow us to do what we're doing here. As you can probably tell if you watch my videos on a regular basis, not a lot of sponsors in the space that are interested in One Piece content. With the bills being paid though, let's go back to that idea, because again, would be very wholesome picking everyone up, and then it would kind of be building Luffy's own big kingdom on the Noah, right? Potentially being an actual pirate king and king of all these people that he's freed in all these nations. And then we could have this like very epic panel where Luffy stops by all the islands, right? And then the last island, wherever that would be, he just stops maybe, at his hometown, Fuchsia Village, when the entire wave hits and we see all these previous places. Alabasta, Dressrosa, right? Cocoa Village, like all of these things just get crushed under a giant tsunami. Pretty epic stuff, but we also do run into another problem if that theory actually turns out to be true, because, well, it once again doesn't really fit with Joy Boy's apology and the promise that he made to the people of Fishman Island and the Mermaid Princess specifically. Let's remember what we know about this mysterious promise again. The promise Joy Boy made does have to do with using Poseidon's powers to raise the ship back to the surface. And we know that whatever it is, the Sea Kings are absolutely stoked about it. They saw Luffy punching their favorite big boat and said, no, absolutely not. This simply will not do, and honestly, the Sea Kings just raise a whole lot of more questions about the whole thing. Fun fact, I've been wanting to make a Sea King video for a while, and we were kind of like in the team discussing it, and we're like, no one's gonna want to watch a Sea King video, so I put it in here because I really wanted to talk about this, and it kind of ties in perfectly with the Noah since the two are connected. Have you ever wondered how the Sea Kings are so long-lived? Highly intelligent, like sentient human-like beings. They have language, can communicate. You just need the voice of all things to actually hear them. They were also super thrown off, by the way, when they noticed that Luffy and Roger seemed to understand what they were saying, since in their minds it should have only been Poseidon. Which, of course, should really remind us all a lot of Zunisha. Luffy can hear them through the voice of all things. They also only take commands from the royalty of another Joy Boy affiliated nation, either Momo or Shirahoshi in this case. And Shirahoshi is the ancient weapon Poseidon, so there's a human component here, a creature component, and a vehicle component. You have probably heard this idea before, we've talked about it on the channel, it's been out for a while in the community, but it does kind of make you wonder if Momo and Zunisha are somehow connected to the ancient weapon Pluton, beyond it just being hidden in Wano and Zunisha needing to break it free. Just like Zunisha has been waiting on edge for someone to please give me an order, the Sea Kings were pretty much elated that the next Poseidon had finally awakened and learned about their powers. They imply that they'd been waiting hundreds of years for the two sovereigns to meet, hoping that this time things could play out better than during the Void Century. So who are the two sovereigns? Is Luffy, the future Pirate King and reborn Joy Boy / Nika, one of them? Is Shirahoshi, the future Queen of the Sea, one? And right now, my money would be on Loki, rightful heir of Elbaf, to be one of them, since it seems like he and Shirahoshi, or should I say Mosa Mosa, are pretty sweet on each other, my favorite couple. And don't worry about it, we'll just ignore the very problematic 47-year age gap here for now, since, you know, giants age well, I guess. Could the Sea Kings actually be cursed, just like Zunisha is? But instead of Zunisha's endless marching to nowhere, could the Sea Kings be cursed to terrorize the seas, specifically the Calm Belt, in order to artificially maintain the Grand Line and prevent people from entering and exiting from points other than Reverse Mountain? Are they there to protect this entire concept? Because very clearly the Grand Line wasn't made by the government, because the, Marines only very recently with the help of Vegapunk figured out how to even cross over the Calm Belt themselves. I mean, I've speculated before that Zunisha might have been a real person at some point, and maybe even a member of Joy Boy's crew. So were maybe all the Sea Kings just people who were then cursed and transformed into sea monsters? That would be incredibly messed up and incredibly cool, actually. Or do their serpentine designs just call back to the times that dragons existed, when they were worshipped as gods? I mean, again, we've got the celestial dragons who claim to be gods. We've got all the Joy Boy affiliated countries that worship serpents or dragons in some way, shape, or form. Are the Sea Kings those dragons, right? There's just so many possibilities to know for sure, but I just need to know what these guys actually are. All right, sorry, Sea King tangent over. They kind of got me distracted here a little bit with how edgy and mysterious they are. They're exactly my type. But back to Joy Boy's promise and apology. If the Noah is for saving the people of the surface, then why apologize to Fishman Island? Right? They're like not the ones who are gonna drown. So is it to bring the fishmen back up to the surface after all? Was I just wrong? Well, as my close personal associate, the Taco Bell Chihuahua, once said to me, ¿Por qué no los dos? What if the Noah's gonna save the fishmen and the normal other things and tribes and races on top of the world, right? And maybe even Skymen, jury's still out on them, they feel like they're pretty much chilling up there. Now, back during the Fishman Island arc, Madame Charlie predicted, of course, that Luffy's gonna destroy Fishman Island, and since he has literally no actual reason to do that, the prevailing theory has been that Luffy, at some point, is gonna destroy Marijua and the Red Line during the final war. And since all of that is, of course, right above Fishman Island, and Fishman Island kind of sits in this cave of the red line, it will also be destroyed in the process, technically by Luffy in a very prophecy by association kind of thing. So what if step 1 of the plan is to get all of the fishermen on the boat and then have the Sea Kings pull it up to the surface, avoiding the cataclysmic destruction of their home? That would also fulfill Otohime's desire of bringing the fishermen back to the surface to live under the sun, just like everyone else. Though I do want to point out that that scene specifically, in Japanese, Otohime uses the katakana and not the kanji for the word sun, kind of like a name. So I personally really think that they're talking about Joy Boy and Nika here, because they're more in the Japanese saying, oh, living under the sun god, right? The person, the sun, more so than the sun, the star, or object in the sky. So there's like some sneaky Joy Boy stuff hidden there in the Japanese too. But then step 2 of this plan, save everyone else. If it's final wartime and the Great Flood is happening while Luffy's also fighting Emu and possibly bringing down the world's last continent, then the people on all the other islands will also need some rescuing. And this would actually give things a little bit of a poetic flair too, because despite all the oppression that the fishermen have faced, they'd be the ones ultimately saving all of humanity and the other tribes. Like, there's a trace of Fisher Tiger's relationship with Koala going on there too. No matter the race, all of the Blue Planet's people were ultimately slaves of Emu and the Celestial Dragons. So I personally could absolutely see the Noah's role playing out kind of like that in the very end. I would probably cry a little or a lot. Okay, you got me. I'd cry a lot. And of course, it's also a little bit difficult to figure out the timeline on all of this because Joy Boy was not able to fulfill the promise, presumably because he was defeated in the war or something else did go wrong. Maybe he got betrayed or Emu just had another ace up their sleeve. But then again, he did have enough time to write the entire apology letter on a poneglyph, which, as we know, means one of the Kozuki people, poor fella, had to like chisel that entire letter in. So it also kind of had to be before Lily allowed those to spread throughout the world. So it's kind of unclear when the promise was supposed to actually happen. But that's of course why the Void Century is so much fun to speculate on, and Fishman Island is of course not the only place that is hiding some crazy Joy Boy secrets, particularly Alabasta and Water 7, who look like Water 7 should just be stacked on top of Alabasta. What's going on there with like Pluton being related to both and Wano? There is actually a lot more going on here under the surface too, and if you want to find out what that is and how they're connected to Joy Boy, you can check out this video right here. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks again to all of our fantastic Patreons. Go check that out again if you haven't yet. And I will hopefully see you in the next video on Sunday. Chapter.